Hello again. I wanted to do a video on blocking. I get a lot of questions about when people watch the techniques and they see a block and then they see a counterattack. There's a lot of people out there that will say that in a real world situation you're not going to have time to be able to block an attack. And when you look at professional fighters, they're not blocking and counterattacking and so on and so forth. Basically, there are different levels of blocking within martial arts. And within Taekwondo, not only different levels of blocking, but there are many different meanings of the word block in Taekwondo. So what most people think of when they think of a block is they think of, you're moving your arm, or usually you're moving your arm to intercept an incoming strike and you're stopping it using your arm, such as the case of a low block. But of course the feet can also be used for blocking too, sometimes. Basically the worst or lowest level of blocking is when you are stopping your opponent's attack using brute force. So in other words, force against force. So if somebody is throwing a roundhouse kick or something, let's say, and I'm stopping that with a low block, that's force against force. It's their leg going against my arm. And again, depending on where you block on the person's leg, I mean, you should be trying to block as high up on the leg as you can to try and reduce the power of that strike. But that's still a leg versus an arm, and your leg is a lot bigger and a lot stronger than your arm, and more often than not, you are going to take damage in your arm, even if you successfully stop a kick like that from somebody who has a powerful roundhouse kick. So that is probably the worst way to block a technique, and that's why we consider it to be the lowest level or lowest form of blocking. But it still has value if your opponent is not very well trained. For example, not everybody is a professional fighter. So there are a lot of people that, their attacks are predictable, or you can see what somebody is going to do. You can tell when somebody is going to punch you and which hand they're going to punch with because they give it away. Maybe somebody is heavily intoxicated, let's say. I mean, not everybody is of sound mind. Not everybody has great reflexes. Some people are very uncoordinated and awkward. So there are a lot of situations where you can find yourself up against an opponent who is not, who doesn't present that much of a threat as, say, a professional level fighter, which again, what are your odds of running into one of those out on the street? So again, there are times where a block like that is certainly going to work. We don't teach them if they don't work. The idea is when you learn them in a club, you're always practicing full movement on every block that you do. You're always doing these long, exaggerated movements with the blocks. And the reason for that is because when you go to use it in a real world scenario, in a real fight, you're going to shorten up the movement. So a block that would normally start from here, you're going to shorten it, and it's going to be a quicker, tighter block, just because your reflexes, your adrenaline, because you're in a panic when you're in a fight. So we teach students the full movement because they're going to automatically shorten it up in a real world scenario. But if you start with only a short technique for every block, then when you go to use it in a real scenario, it shortens up even more, and now you no longer have an effective block at all. So we always practice full movement on all the blocks, even though that's not the way that you actually perform those blocks in a real world situation. You're always going to do a shorter, quicker block, only as much movement as necessary to achieve the objective. So anyway, the lowest level of blocking, force against force. A step up from that, a higher level of blocking, is when you can deflect an incoming strike. So if somebody is punching you and you're able to deflect that off to the side, a very short, quick movement, and you can deflect that punch to the side, you know, that is already a better type of block than trying to stop force against force. Because in situations like that, you don't take any damage when you stop that attack. Whereas when you meet force against force, you're going to be taking damage while you block. So always better to deflect if possible, because it minimizes the damage to you and you're still protecting yourself. And of course, the bigger and stronger the opponent that you're facing, the more that you want to be able to deflect those attacks that are coming at you. You don't want to stop an attack using brute force against somebody much bigger and much stronger than you. That's just a bad idea. So deflect if possible, that's even better. Another level up from that, so we've gone from level 1 to level 2, now level 3, is if you can deflect or block your opponent's attack and simultaneously counterattack at the same time. So now instead of this idea of somebody's going to attack, I'm going to block, and now I'm going to counterattack, you know, the amount of time that it takes to stop somebody's attack and then throw back, you know, that's a much longer period of time than if you can, for example, stop somebody, deflect their attack coming in, and throw a punch simultaneously, or some other form of attack. That's already much better. So you're taking yourself out of harm's way, and you are also counterattacking at the same time. So now your block and your attack finish simultaneously, and that's better than stopping an attack and then beginning an attack of your own. So again, it's more difficult to do that. It takes more training to do that, but that is now moving up higher level technique. And again, for people that watch the videos that I put out there, you know, when you watch white belt, yellow belt, those techniques, they're doing the basic blocks and then counterattack. As you get up higher, you're going to start to see some of the techniques where you're blocking and counterattacking at the same time. Now, what is, say, the highest level of blocking that you could have? Well, if you use, it's basically like a form of preemptive blocking, if you will. When you use an attack as a block, so when you see that your opponent is coming in and you just very quickly attack as they approach and your attack gets there first, that is like a form of preemptive blocking. It means that you are stopping your opponent's attack before it can even get started. So as soon as they move within range, as soon as you see that they're about to do something to you, you know, they're about to throw a punch, whatever it is that they're going to do, and right away you get them, you counterattack immediately. That is essentially preemptive blocking, if you will. You're using an attack as a block, essentially, and you are defending yourself without, you know, block, counterattack, none of that stuff. You're just simply attacking when you see the opening. That is like the highest level of blocking. And again, this is, you know, getting up more to the level of a professional fighter. Another form of blocking that you will see, and another meaning of the word block in martial arts, is when you have a guarding position. So for example, you have a knife hand guarding block in Taekwondo, where it's a posture, and even though it's called a block, you're not actually blocking anything with that block. What you are doing is you are presenting an obstacle, essentially, for your opponent, so that it takes away the option for them to throw a straight punch to your face, at least from that position, right? You are putting your hand in a position where your opponent in order to reach your face, they have to get past there, right? So your hand, when you're in a guarding block position, your hand is acting as a block. It's like an active block. You don't have to move your hand around anywhere to intercept punches. You just have to put it out there and leave it there. And as long as your hand is in that position, it is protecting you. It is acting like a form of a shield almost, but it is performing the role of blocking. According to Taekwondo, it is a block just by sitting out there, because it is taking away options that your opponent would have that they no longer have. So just to recap again, different levels of blocking. The worst is if you meet force against force. So if you are stopping somebody's attack by brute force, using one of your arms, for example, to stop an incoming attack, force against force would be the worst. Better than that is if you can deflect an attack off to the side. Even better than that is if you can block and counterattack simultaneously. And even better than that is if you can read your opponent's attack and simply get your attack off first before they even get there. Like an immediate counterattack. That is like the highest form of protection that you can get to. And as you move up the ranks in any particular martial art, you start to use more of those higher level techniques. But even in the professional ranks, you'll still see fighters using blocks. It's just oftentimes people don't recognize it, or they don't think of it that way. But if you watch mixed martial arts fights, for example, you watch the fighters very closely and you will see them using many of the basic blocks. Again, the movements are very compact, it's very subtle, but they are definitely blocking, and they are using a combination of head movement with blocks to avoid, and then of course the higher level blocking where they are counter-attacking at the same time. You'll see all that kind of stuff happening in professional fights, so it's definitely it's all valuable tools that you need to learn, and you need to put them into your arsenal of techniques. You have to start with the basics and build your way up to the more advanced techniques. You don't just jump into the advanced stuff without having the foundational stuff first. So anyway, I wanted to get some of that information out there because there's a lot of misconceptions with blocking, and it was long overdue for a video. Thanks.